Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to each one of you and your colleagues for what you did. I was on the floor of the House helping to defend the voters of Arizona to a challenge to their electors while you were out trying to keep a violent mob from invading the Capitol. So I really do want to thank you for your tremendous courage and stamina and heroism, not just for myself. I chair the House Administration Committee, and I know how many others work in this Capitol, not only the staff to the members of Congress, but the food service workers who were present and clerical staff. You saved them as well, and so they also owe you a debt of gratitude. I do realize that ultimately the rioters breached the Capitol, but the time that you kept them out really made a tremendous difference. You saved the day, you saved the Constitution, and it made a tremendous difference for our country. And Officer Dunn, I did hear you about the need for additional help. And I want to pledge to you that we will work with the Capitol Police to make sure that the resources, the mental health unit has the resources that officers need. I'll make that pledge to you right now. I would like to ask Sergeant Gunnell, not everyone knew that you were fighting in the hallway near the lower West Terrace on January 6th. Can you tell me what you went through on that hallway? And then while you were there, Metropolitan Police arrived to help you out. What difference did that make?
Sure, ma'am. Before I start, by no means am I suggesting that we will go to his house. I apologize for my outburst. After we retreated to the lower West Terrace entrance, it was rough. It was terrible. Everything that was happening to us, it was simultaneously. And we didn't have a lot of support. We had probably like 50 officers at most when we went back in. And once we were there, we started saying to ourselves, this is it. This is the entrance where they're going to try to breach. We're going to hold the line. We're going to do everything possible without even coordinating among ourselves. The few officers who were still carrying shields, we automatically assumed position in the front. Some of those shields were taken, ripped apart from the officer's hand. Some of the officers also got concussed because they were hit with the same shields they were holding, because that was so violently taken from them that they were concussed. We did multiple struggles in terms of fighting. My shield was round, and I was able to get some strikes, but because we were in so close quarters, it was hard for us to even do that. The only thing we were allowed to was push forward. Whoever had shields, stay in the front, and whoever was behind the people with the shield, then they were striking those rioters. At some point, I fell on top of the floor, on the floor on top of some shields, trying to help and assist some of the officers. And I got pulled to the crowd. Luckily, I was able to free myself and stand up. Later on, the second time I went back to the front, that's when Officer Hodges was getting trampled. I was getting trampled because just a mere force of the rioters pushing forward and police officer pushing out, we were getting trampled in the middle. So it was very terrible things that happened to us there.
Officer Fanone, before I ask you a question, I I'd like to show a brief video clip of some of what you went through today. I realize this can be difficult to watch, but I think it's important for the public to see.
You got fight the right people. Yeah, come on. Try it.
I got you, Mike. That's my hand on your gun.
Push him back. Back up.
Mike, stay in there, buddy. Mike, it's Jimmy. I'm here. Mike.
Almost all of that was from your body camera footage. Can you walk us through what we've just seen, Officer Finnon?
Well, I believe the first portion of that video began, was my body-worn camera footage from the crypt area of the Capitol Rotunda. It was there that I first heard the 1033 or distress call come out from the Lower West Terrace tunnel, which I didn't realize at the time was only a few hundred yards away from where I was at. I told my partner, Jimmy Albright, who was there with me, that there was a 1033 coming out from the Lower West Terrace. We tried to get our bearings and figure out which way that might be. We asked a group of Capitol police officers, and they directed us down a set of stairs. From there, Jimmy and I walked down to the Lower West Terrace tunnel. The first thing I remember was seeing a buddy of mine, Sergeant Bill Bogner, who's a administrative sergeant. He used to work in my district. Now he works over at the academy. And he was unable to see. He had been sprayed in the face with bear mace. And I went up to him and told him, hey, it's Finone. I remember he stretched out his hand to shake mine. And that's when he told me that the guys that were just beyond that set of double doors had been fighting there for, I believe he said about 30 minutes. I don't think he realized what time it was because they'd been fighting since around 1 p.m. It was 3 o'clock. So those guys have been there fighting for 2 hours unrelieved. I remember looking up through the set of double doors, there's glass panes, and you could see the CS gas, like white powder, still lingering in the air. It was at that point that I realized I probably should have brought my gas mask. So I went through the double doors and I saw Ramey Kyle, who's at the time a commander with our Criminal Investigations Division, overseeing all the detectives units. Like many other officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains that day, he self-deployed and found himself commanding a group of about 30 or 40 officers there in the Lower West Terrace tunnel. Commander Kyle was having a difficult time breathing. I remember I followed him back out through the set of double doors into that initial hallway as he kind of cleared himself, straightened himself up. I described it before. I thought he looked like George Patton. I remember he put his hat back on and walked right back out through doorway into the tunnel, and I followed him. It was at that point, I think, when I started approaching that group of officers there, defending the doorway, that I realized the gravity of the situation. My initial thought was these guys look like they look beat to hell. And, you know, maybe I could try to get in there and get some guys some help. So I told Jimmy that, you know, we needed to get in there and try to offer assistance. And that's what we did initially. We started making our way through the crowd of officers, yelling out, who needs a break? And like I said in my initial testimony, there were no volunteers. There were officers who identified other colleagues who were in need of help. And I remember somebody yelling out, "This guy needs help," and handed me that officer. I handed him off to Jimmy and told him to get him to the back. And I continued to make my way up to the front lines. Once I got up there, it was the first time I really came face to face with these terrorists. They were dressed in, you know, clothing adorned with political slogans, "Make America Great Again," Donald Trump 2020, things of that nature. They were wearing military-style clothing, Kevlar vests, Kevlar helmets. Many of them had gas masks, and quite a few had shields, which they had taken away from law enforcement officers. And they were using them to beat us at the front line. The first thing I told them was, "Hey man, we got to get these doors closed. We got injured officers in here." And that really seemed to piss those guys off. They became incredibly violent, and that's when that surge that you watched in some of the video began. And you had a large group at the mouth of that tunnel entrance trying to push their way through the officers who were fighting to defend it. I believe had they done so, or had they accomplished that, they would have trampled us to death. Most certainly, you would have had police officers killed. I fought there at the front for some time. I was yelling out, you know, trying to inspire some of the other officers that were up there that were tired, telling them to dig in and push. And we started to make some progress. We pushed those guys out of the tunnel, out through the initial threshold. And I remember thinking to myself, man, it's good to get some fresh air. It was at that point that I was pulled off the line. That initial period of time where I was pulled, you know, off that line was kind of a blur. I just remember getting violently assaulted from every direction, and eventually found myself out probably about 250, maybe 300 feet away from the mouth of the tunnel where the other officers were at. And I knew I was up shit creek without a paddle. I was trying to push guys off of me, create some space. All the while, I recognized the fact that there were individuals that were trying to grab a hold of my gun. I remember one of them distinctly lunging at me time and time again, trying to grab my gun. And I heard people in the crowd yelling, "Get his gun, kill him with his own gun," and words to that effect. I thought about using my weapon. I believed that there were individuals in the crowd whose intentions were to kill me. And I came to that conclusion because of the fact that separated from these other officers who were only trying to defend the Capitol, I no longer posed any type of threat, nor was I an impediment to them, going inside of the building. But yet they tortured me. They beat me. I was struck with a taser device at the base of my skull numerous times. And they continued to do so until I yelled out that I have kids. And I said that hoping to appeal to some of those individuals' humanity. And fortunately, a few did step in and intervene on my behalf. They did assist me back towards the mouth of the tunnel entrance, and other officers were then able to rescue me and pull me back inside. But at that point, I was unconscious. And based off the body-worn camera footage, it's believed that I was unconscious for approximately 4 minutes.
Thank you, officer, and thanks to each one of you. Our country is lucky, really blessed, that you are as patriotic and brave as you are. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Young lady yields back. Chair recognizes